Nicki, well, within the last week, you had that story on the survey and the team name. I'm curious what first of all, how long did it take you to go door to door to get all those people?
I mean, it's been a long year, let me tell you.
I'm just glad you finally put Sam to good use to go into getting all the stories. But seriously, what were you surprised? What did you think of the findings? Were you surprised by anything?
Not necessarily. I honestly thought it would be a little bit more skewed. And I think anything this early in the process, warrants the caveat that it's early. Like, the Washington football team warmed up to a good number of people, so I would expect this name to do the same. And what I learned in this process is the colors mean more to people than the actual name. So whatever they're called, as long as you're burgundy and gold, and until you win, really everything's going to stay the same. So yeah, I mean, only 5% say they love it at this point. Not terribly surprising. Only 36% say they like it. And close to half of them say they either dislike it or hate it. Which, again, not really surprising. I feel like the name change was a no-win for the team. You're always going to have people who.
Right. And I actually kind of think it's probably, those numbers are probably good for them in some ways, that they probably say that's not bad.
Right. No, absolutely. And again, it's early. I think those numbers can change. I think the name right now is new. And I think Kevin Sheehan actually made a good point that now it seems really final that the old controversial name is really done. Whereas when you had the Washington football team, you're kind of in that interim phase. It doesn't really feel final, but now it probably does.
Well, and it did. And it's funny because I had talked to Kevin about that a couple weeks ago, like before the name came out, just how jarring I thought the whole process would be for people who are still, it was like the finality of it, I thought was going to hit people hard. And so I think it did. What did you, as far as the colors go, we've seen the uniforms. Some of them don't exactly look like they're burgundy, maybe, so what did you find on that part?
Yeah, we didn't survey people on the uniforms. We asked them about the name and the stadium and the old name. But from what I've heard from most people is they like the matte helmets, but the red looks a little cranberry-ish. It seems kind of torn. Some people love the all burgundy look. Some people hate it. Some people hate the all white uniforms. Some people hate it. So I can't get a good read on the uniforms. I like the all black, but then there's also the contingent that says that's not really Washington colors. That doesn't look anything like us, but I don't know. I think it looks like either way until you win football games.
Well, I think if they win, if they win in those colors, I think people will be okay. Listen, I'm an Ohio State guy, and there are sometimes they'll come out in these black uniforms like that's not Ohio State. And then you start watching the game and you just want them to play well and win. And if they don't win in those colors, like that's not Ohio State. So, and even sometimes I still say that, but because it's jarring to see that, do you think it would have changed? Because I know you guys was district residents. And this may be hard to answer, but do you think it would have changed to include suburban areas, or do you think that maybe, I don't know if you can even answer that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I wondered the same. I kind of feel like it with the name, it would sort of be the same. It might be a little bit more skewed negatively, just because you're incorporating more people and, but yeah, it's hard to say.
It's a hard thing to answer.
I think either way, you're going to get a generally negative reaction at this point because it's so new and most people just don't like change, as especially if you're used to something for 87 years, there's a legacy there. There's history there. So, but it needed to be changed. So,
and I know there's some of it, the perception is, well, certain other teams' names it took a while to warm, maybe that the Packers sounded weird at first, this team, but they weren't changing a name that fans viewed as iconic either. So so I think you have the double whammy, and it's going to take a little bit longer, and you better win and all that. So stadium stuff, what did you find there?
Yeah, I mean, people care right now, everybody just says it belongs in DC. That's where it's a DC team. It belongs in DC. Right. You know, why are we talking about Virginia? I mean, nobody likes going to Landover anyway. But a lot of them just kept saying it comes down to winning. If you win, people show up. Another thing that people really mentioned was public transportation. You got to make it accessible to people, whether it's in Virginia or Maryland or DC, make it accessible, because right now, you know, the stadium in Landover is so difficult to get in and out. So that was one thing that came up when I started talking to people, and that went beyond our survey. But, you know, we asked about, you know, tax subsidies and would they be okay with using taxpayer money or city money to help fund a new stadium? And many said no. There were a couple that said, yeah, it's a part of business. I get it. I wouldn't mind it. It'd be great if they won, but right. You know, I actually thought it would be even more skewed there, but some people didn't seem to mind it.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about public transportation too, it's why the talk of Prince William County is very difficult to grab hold of, because there isn't that level of public transportation there right now. And whereas Loudoun, you do have it, and obviously in the district you have it, definitely. So, you know, we'll see. Let's get on to on-field topics, because that's a little bit more, I think, entertaining. So we talked about all this stuff, but first of all, you got the combine this week and coming up. When you're going there, what are you looking for? Because you're going to be there all week. What are you looking for? And what are you looking for?
I to me, the combine for our purposes for media, because we don't get to sit in on the workouts. They let us select few in on quarterbacks. I'm not sure if they're going to allow that this year, but in normal years they allow that. So for what I'm looking for is talking to the prospects and learning who they are, how they handle themselves in front of media, which can be very intimidating. Like I think back to you know, Joe Burrow's years, and the scrums are so big, like you can't even see the player in front of you. And I got to imagine for the person up there, that's got to be pretty intimidating. So I'm always curious to see how players handle that. And what they say about their past, if they've had, you know, any sort of red flags. I'm always curious what teams they've talked to. And sometimes that can always be taken out of context, because teams, it's always, you know, it's usually every team, and then they'll have top 30 visits that aren't really, you know, there's not a ton of correlation on whether there's interest or if they just need more information. But anyway, I'm curious to see more how these guys handle themselves. And then of course, talking to the other coaches and GMs, kind of seeing where they're at. We get a good amount of time with Ron Rivera, supposed to get time with Martin Mayhew, but also hearing from the other GMs and coaches who have quarterbacks that might be on the move. You know, what do they say? Is there kind of anything interesting to parse there? And I honestly think beyond the quarterbacks, I think this is the really interesting time. You know, Washington needs a lot of pieces outside of quarterback. I mean, I look at the DBs. This is a good year for cornerbacks. You know,
it's a really good year for cornerbacks.
I mean, it's that everything's kind of been overlooked because of the importance of the quarterback position. But I think there's a number of good prospects that could really stand out this year.
Cornerbacks are some good ones, and I keep hitting hard the middle linebacker and finding somebody there, and I think that they are going to hit that hard as well. So what for you? What are the other spots that you think that they would need to address besides quarterback? And we'll get to more quarterback in a minute, but let's go here right now.
Yeah. Well, you look at this class. I mean, it's heavy on edge rusher. I think they're pretty deep there. They could use another one in the latter rounds, probably. Right, I also, you know, going back to your earlier question about things you're looking for. I mean, this is a big time when moves are made behind the scenes.
Right.
You know, trades here or agreed upon trades. You know, this is when legally or not, you know, many free agent deals are cut. So seeing who's talking to who. But
although, you know, it's funny about it's, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's funny about that because that used to be a bigger thing before that legal tampering period. Now it's like a precursor to the legal tampering, but that's still, there's still an introduction to hey, we're going to be interested in your guy. Just listen to us in 2 weeks or a week and a half.
Right. No, exactly. And there are agents that have guys already on the team. They're talking I would imagine there's conversation with McKissick's agent at this combine, and, others they're trying to keep. And if that agent just so happens to rep another player on another team when he comes up in conversation, what can you do?
Yeah.
But other positions, definitely DBs, safeties, corners too. Wasn't the greatest year for William Jackson, but kind of tied to him on that contract. Kendall Fuller, you got to consider his long-term future with the team. And still no real, lead guy in that nickel position. But safety, it seems wide open outside of Cam Pearl right now.
And then it depends on, do they want to bring back McCain? Do they look at somebody else? But yeah, right. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with certain guys at that. I don't think you can go wrong taking a guy there. And, my belief, Nicki, is always like, if you think the guy's really good and can help you, then you draft him and you work the other stuff out later, because it's always not about what's right. What do you need now? It's about who can help you win.
Right.
So I'm with you. Like, if you can get a corners, it's like pitching in baseball. You don't have enough of those guys.
Yeah, exactly. So DB's middle linebacker, and then on offense, I mean, I feel like they could always use more weapons. I mean, because Curtis Samuel in my mind is not ever a guarantee. I feel like last season we went into the year thinking, oh, they're pretty loaded at receiver. They got a good number of weapons, and they ended the year, I would say, kind of worse off than they were the year before, just because of injuries. So they need depth there at receiver. I would lean more toward getting a veteran there, just because first-year pass catchers tend to struggle in year one. But they need depth there across the board. And then, not a ton of guard talent, it looks like, in this draft class, but they got to find some sort of solution for Brandon Sheriff. And, if that means Schweitzer stepping in, you get a guy for depth, a younger guy for depth. Seems like a
yeah, I'm with you. I would address the interior line some point in the middle rounds of the draft. If they can do it, not maybe Sadiq Charles does develop, because he shows flashes, but then, as you and I know, like he was also inactive for many games and wasn't always but he did show flashes when he'd go in there. So can he develop if they just keep him at guard? Because I think that's where his best spot is. Now I know they like to swing. You got to be able to do both. I get that, but his best spot is guard. And so, there's possibilities there, but I'm with you. I would get a guy. I'm definitely with you on the skill guys. And, and whether it's a veteran or even drafting, if you draft a guy, to me, it's a first round pick guy you just got to take there, whether it's, whether you want a Garrett Wilson, whether you want the Drake London, somebody, can he be your Jamar Chase, right? Somebody who is of that caliber. Because I think that would help Terry a lot. And here's the other reason, Nicki, too, because J.D. McKissick is coming off the neck injury. We don't know, where's he going to go? Was he going to be back? Does that neck injury linger? Who knows? There's a lot we don't know about with him, right? So you got that. Then you got Logan Thomas coming off the ACL. Big weapon for them in the red zone, but when is he going to be ready? We have Curtis Samuel. I think Curtis Samuel, if he's healthy, you have an idea what he can do, because he's done it. But if and when healthy, right? And so we don't know how that's going to transpire. But if he is, then okay. De'Ami Brown, we don't know.
Yeah.
There's still
so many ifs on the offensive side. If it all works out, they got a lot of weapons for whoever their quarterback is going to be. But the last 2 years, it hasn't always worked out. There's just been so many injuries, or guys haven't performed to the level that they expected them to. And you got to get some reliability in there is how I see it.
Right. And again, I think what you also see in this league is you need the weapons. You need to have the offensive weapons to really threaten teams. And especially if you want to go further in the playoffs, you have to have that. And especially if you don't have the quarterback. If you're not able to get a top guy, you better have the talent around them that can make them look like a better quarterback.
Right. Guys that can create on their own, who can make the job easier if you get a young guy in there. Because like you said, lately, it's been all on Terry, and there's only so much one player can do if there's no other threat around them.
Right. And I think we saw that too when they lost McKissick and Thomas. the impact on Terry was pretty grand. And then I also think at times it's like, then it's on the offensive coaches to be able to move. I think sometimes they did all right with this, and sometimes you wondered, but move him around a little bit more, create some situations for him to get the ball in a variety of ways. And it's a cliche to say that, it's always an easy thing to say. But that's one thing that, but they would have to scheme. They had to scheme so hard because they didn't have enough around him to help that. And it becomes exhausting to have to play that way, which is why I would go get another guy if somebody presents themselves in the draft or in free agency. And then, then we don't even know. We didn't even bring up Adam Humphries, and he's not some game-breaking weapon, but he was a solid slot receiver for them.
Yep. Another free agent that they got to consider. And I think they could get him pretty cheap. I think they could keep a lot of their guys on relatively reasonable deals. So he's another that would just make sense to keep because he's a savvy vet. He knows where he needs to be. He's reliable. And I just think whomever you bring in at quarterback, he's going to help them. So we'll see. I think the combine is a time where, it's not just about the rookies. So that's the focus. The quarterbacks are the focus. I think this is a time where we might start to see a number of these moves get made. Definitely.
And I think I've heard that from a lot of people, like, what do you think about this person, that person, is something close? Well, blah, blah, blah. We'll talk to people at the combine. It's always, that's always the punctuation, that sentence. And when you talk about reliable and knows where he needs to be, it also sounds like you're describing Matt Paras from the Washington Times. So, so he and Adam Humphries are kind of like, Matt Paras is our slot receiver in the press room, right?
Very much is. Yeah. When I look at Matt Paras, I definitely think, savvy slot receiver right there.
I'm picturing him running an option route, and it's kind of funny in my head, to be honest. So anyway, we'll move on to quarterback. What do you think? First of all, there's about 100 scenarios, it feels like. That where they could go. What do you think is the best option or most realistic option for them at this point?
Most realistic, I would say, because I don't think any of these are great options, assuming, Aaron Rodgers stays or goes somewhere else and Russell Wilson is off the table. If they don't get either of those two, which both of them seem highly unlikely. I think of those two, Russell's a more, this is going to sound like I'm saying Russell's a realistic option. Of those two, he's more the option than Aaron Rodgers. Right.
But that doesn't mean
unlikely.
Yeah. I'm probably closer to being able to afford a high-end Mercedes versus a Lamborghini. Doesn't mean I'm getting one.
Wow. You just
I don't even know if that's accurate.
Wow. Only a Mercedes, really?
High end, I don't know.
Like bump them up like a Maserati or something. Jeez.
Well, I was gonna say, but I don't know I don't know the price tags of them. I'm not a car guy like that.
I noticed. No, I mean, but once those two guys are off the table, right, then you're looking at the Jimmy Garoppolo tier, right? And I mean, I don't really know who else would be in that tier. It's kind of like Jimmy Garoppolo or Mitchell Trubisky, Deshaun Watson. His name is always going to be out there. Right. I could see how there would be interest. I could see how there would be trepidation on many fronts. Given his own situation, you don't know if that's going to be resolved. You don't know if he's going to be suspended. And then, right, given what the franchise has been dealing with the last couple of years, is that the right move?
Correct.
But
and if he'd even want to come here.
Right, exactly. That and that to me is always a question that you got to ask. And I know Ron Rivera thinks it's a very enticing place, but this team has been to the playoffs 5 times over the last 20 something years. I think people know what, Washington's recent history is. Will they have all the weapons? They appear to be a team on the rise, but are they? Anyway, so, Mitchell Trubisky, that's kind of the next year. Is Carson Wentz going to be available?
Yep.
And then you start to wonder, are these really better options than Taylor Heineke? My dogs are wrestling in the background. Sorry. Mitchell Trubisky, I could see the intrigue there. Some might feel like there's still a ton of potential there. And he's coming from Buffalo. And if you come from Carolina or Buffalo, correct, or both you're
It's a made man. And I think there's going to be some intrigue by some teams. Like, was it really all Matt Nagy's fault? And I'm not buying that it was all Matt Nagy's fault, because what you see on film is a guy who doesn't always throw with anticipation, waits to guys to get open, and mechanics are up and down. So I think there was definitely a lot that was on Trubisky himself, and you can't overlook that. But I think they're going to look at it, and here's, I think if you get a Wentz or a Trubisky, you're pairing him with a rookie. Do you think?
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And the question is, then do you take a guy in the first round? And I think you have to. I think you have to get
if a guy. If you get one of those guys, and the guy's there, you got to take
absolutely. But what does the second round look like in this class? I always think, whatever you think of the quarterbacks in January, that position is always going to get pushed up by April.
Correct.
And they're always, the top 4, typically, not every year, typically going to be taken early, whether they're the best player on the board or not, because of the need for the position. So if Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral, if they're off the board already, do you use your first round pick on a quarterback or your second round pick on a quarterback? Do you really feel like he can develop into a guy? I mean, it's a hard year for this position.
It is. And that's why I wonder, and I was going to ask you too, with Ron Rivera has been very vocal about the desire to upgrade there and the sales pitch. And the sales pitch has been going on for a couple months now. And the desire, the public stated desire has been going on for a few months. So what do you think of that strategy?
Yeah. I could see how he thought it would be a sound strategy at first to really, get fans thinking they do want to be aggressive. And I do think they do want to be
they
aggressive.
Definitely want to be, yeah.
That the inventory just isn't there this year. So I think they could come out of this and many fans will be like, are you serious? This is being aggressive. And it could be viewed as another bridge year for a quarterback until next year. But the options just aren't great right now. No. And you can always say in hindsight, they should have given up more for Matt Stafford. I feel like that deal was kind of predetermined from the start, given Matt Stafford was having lunch with Sean McVay, like right when it went down or something.
That was a random meeting, Nikki. That was a random meeting.
It was a random meeting in Cabo. Who could have seen that coming?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything's 2020 in hindsight, but
I don't think with Stafford, especially like if you're competing with the Rams to get him, it was going to be very, very, very difficult. And you would have had to have given up 3 first-round picks probably or so to get him. And then that's where the cost analysis comes in. That's why I think like with Garoppolo, I think there's some hesitation there because the injury history as to what you would give for him. And that may lead you down the road. Is it better to, does Carson Wentz become available? Does he get cut? And if so, then do you pair him with a similar style quarterback like a Malik Willis? So I think there's a lot of different scenarios that could unfold here, and different quarterbacks I could see. And but I'm with you. Like, and the problem is that this isn't a great year, and so that's why I wonder. Fans are going to get all excited about this, and I think they're smart enough to know that it is difficult. I definitely get that sense from fans too. But how about just from with Ron? Just again, not many coaches go out there and say it to this extent. When you're trying to get it, do you feel it makes them look too desperate or just honest?
I mean, I think it's his reality too. I mean, everybody knows they need a quarterback.
It's not like no one in the league is saying, "Oh, Washington's set." Nobody's saying.
Yeah, right. And but the thing I don't maybe take issue with his message is they're not a quarterback away. Despite what Robert Griffin III thinks, they are not a quarterback away from contending. I mean, we just went over all the positions that they need.
But it also depends on the quarterback too.
Yes, I agree. You need a quarterback to win, but I don't think they're in the same position that, say, the Rams were when they went out and acquired Matt Stafford. I think they need more. I think they're so much better off on the offensive line, with or without Sheriff, than they were 2 years ago. I think they've developed more weapons at running back. Certainly, they got some intriguing pieces at receiver, tight end, definitely. Hopefully, that D line can kind of find its way back to 2020. But I still think they have a lot of missing pieces, and if they can get a quarterback that can help them win, they're still a year or two away from really being, considered a contender, in my opinion.
And like I said, to me, then it depends on the quarterback. If you get Russell Wilson, right, different spot, because sure, Russell elevates. Yeah. And I look at the Bengals. The Bengals have a lot of holes, and the right guy took them to the place. Now, they also lost 7 games, and they had a nice stretch. They had a nice hot stretch in the playoffs, but it's what one guy can do. But I also know that Joe Burrow is a rare dude. So right, that's why it's hard to find that guy. So if you go out and if you go get the bridge guy, let's say you get Trubisky, but you somehow draft Kenny Pickett, I don't look at them as saying, now watch him roll. I think it's like, okay, now you have to keep building, and then another year. And I think in that scenario, can you be good enough to get to the playoffs?
Right.
Do you think?
One coach really just, I thought his description was, or his analogy was, it made sense, and it seemed sound in that, when you get a guy like Garoppolo, or maybe even Trubisky, or kind of that second tier guy in this year's market, everything has to be perfect around him, right, for it to succeed. And you look at, what the 49ers had in terms of weapons, their scheme, and it wasn't always perfect. And when it wasn't, they lost. They dealt with a number of injuries too. And that's the hard part. When you get one of the elite guys, they can mask a lot of deficiencies, right, be it the line, they can overcome mistakes of the defense. They can do things to take your team past whatever issue exactly. But if you have, a non-elite quarterback, everything has to be perfect, and that's really, really hard to do. You can't control a lot of the things that happen out there, Right,
which is why you can't give up a lot for certain players who are not at that level. Right. And again, I always go back to Garoppolo. He's the one guy we know is available. But you can't give up a ton for him, because here's the other thing that I was thinking about this the other day. He may have been in the best spot for him already, right, meaning San Francisco. So is he going to be, you have to and I know how teams are, they're always going to convince themselves that they're the best spot for a guy, right, or that they can
make out there, but he will definitely work out with
right. Us. But from an outside perspective, looking at it, knowing what he had, the running game he had, the defense he had, the coach he had calling plays, that I just wonder, is this going to be a better spot to bring out more from Garoppolo than what he already has shown? I'd be concerned with that. And it's not a knock on anybody here. I just have a lot of respect for Kyle Shanahan, that run game, the design of it, that defense. I think it's hard to match that. Having said that, Nicki, he'd come here and he'd be the second best quarterback in this division.
Right. I mean, and that is something I think Ron can kind of pump up even more. This is an enticing division. There's a lot of leeway here. And that, with Garoppolo though, you also have to consider the finances.
Yes,
he does have. He has a $25.6 million cap if he comes here. If you want to lower that, you're talking about extending him. And do you really want to, lock up multiple years to a guy that you don't know if it's going to work out? And
his injury history.
Right. Exactly.
I give him some guaranteed money, but not a lot of years. And you could get out of it if you need to after a year or two.
Right. Maybe
that's the only way I do it.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the other thing to consider. There are a lot of, it's not as, I feel like, sitting on the couch, sometimes I can be, just get that guy, give up this guy, get that guy. But there's just, I think all the teams really, you got to look 1, 2, 3 years down the line, to really determine if this is the right fit.
And it's not always just, is the guy an upgrade? It's is he enough of an upgrade at this cost? That's the big key. So like, that's why you go back to the Trubisky's. Well, he costs what, 7 to 10 million? I mean, so, you can say, well, it gives you, again, but you have to pair him with the rookie. And then it's like, well, which one is going to be there if you want one at 11? If not, you trade back. If there's a couple that are there that you'd be okay with. And
Right.
Usually there's one guy or two guys that, in this round, we really like this guy. In this round, we like this guy. You're not going to like them all. So you're not going to think all of them are fits, but at least with a guy like that, if Wentz becomes free, and I'm not sure that that's going to be the best option for them, but he will be an option. So I don't know, Nicki, in the end, it's going to be, what do you think? Like in the end, I don't want to ask predictions, but what do you think happens?
I think they get Mitchell Trubisky. Fans will be really disappointed. I think he'll maybe win a couple games. We could be in the same spot we were last year with Taylor Heineke closing out the season, then looking ahead to 2022.
Do you think they take a rookie in that spot then? Do you think they draft somebody if they go that route?
I think they should draft somebody
Yes.
if they go that route. Will they? I don't know with this team. I think they should. I think they absolutely should. If you're not getting Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, you absolutely should. You have to plan for the future. There's always a debate of, if you don't love the guy, don't take him. But do you feel like he can win for you? Can you develop him? There's no guarantees about next year. That's my issue with always kicking the can down the road, is there's no guarantees. It looks like it's going to be a better class with Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, but there's no guarantees. And are you going to be willing next year to say, if you do win and you have a latter round pick, are you going to be willing to give up multiple picks to move up? I mean, there's even more what ifs then.
Right.
But I think you have to take a quarterback.
And my thing would be, if you don't have one at this point, just be aggressive looking for that guy. And if it means you sign Trubisky and you draft somebody in the first round or even the second round because your guy's not there and you're not sold on it, do it again next year. Be aggressive. And until you get that problem solved, I just think that there's going to be a ceiling as to what they can do. And I think history shows that while defense is, you want to be able to build this great defense, that signal caller can take you further than anything. So we shall see. But well, Nicki, listen, I appreciate you coming on. Have fun in Indianapolis, and we will talk to you soon. Appreciate it.
Of course. Sounds good.